This tutorial goes along with Roman numeral 6 in the Unit 6 Honors Packet and is on acids and bases. Acids and bases is just another way to classify compounds, and it's according to pH instead of how compounds bond. Most students, when thinking of acids, think of the strong type that burn people in movies and think the acids are something to be feared. However, other acids are common items such as vinegar and citric acid, which we eat all of the time. Bases include things like milk of magnesia, ammonia, and other cleaning agents like detergents. The most simplistic types of acids and bases are actually ionic compounds. So they do fall into the ionic versus covalent. It's just a whole different way of looking at classifying based on pH. Acids are compounds that begin with a hydrogen ion. The key to naming an acid is to look at the anion. So we're going to look at the anions here in these three acids to understand how to name them. Notice each of these starts with an H for hydrogen, and then they have an anion. What are these three anions? The S, the SO3, and the SO4. Well, that's sulfide, sulfite, and sulfate. And based on if the anion is an ide, or an ate, that's going to tell us how to name this acid. When you have an ide or a nonmetal, you start the name with hydro, you put the base, in this case sulfur, and then you add the suffix ic. So HS is hydrosulfuric acid. If you have the ites, you're going to not have a prefix, you're just going to start with your base, sulfur, and this time the suffix is going to be os, O-U-S. So this is sulfurous acid. Now let's talk about sulfate. Again, there's no prefix. We put the base sulfur, and we're going to use that same suffix that we had used for the first one, ic. It just doesn't have that hydro prefix. So we've got hydrosulfuric acid, sulfurous acid, and sulfuric acid. And it's based on what that anion was. So if the anion is your nonmetal, you add hydro and ic. If it's your ite, polyatomic ion, you use the OUS ending. And if it's your ate polyatomic ion, you use the IC ending. You want to try these? Go ahead and pause and see if you can get them right. So for just plain nitrogen, we used hydronitric acid. For nitrite, we added the OUS ending, nitrous acid. And for nitrate, we added the IC, nitric acid. And that's how you name acids. Bases are a lot more simple. You just name them like any ionic compound. The premise of a base is it ends with a hydroxide ion. So in this case, we have sodium hydroxide. And bases really are just that simple. So don't forget, acids start with a hydrogen, bases end with a hydroxide. And that's acids and bases.